collaboration platform in British Telecom, the BT account. Collaboration comes very close to my heart. At the time, what they were doing is they invested 10 to 20 billion pounds in converting their wires, the network into an IP-based one. It was a program called 21CN, and people like Balaji were heavily involved. So at some point they thought, we're spending tens of billions of dollars. What is the revenue plan to get extra money out of this investment once they make the network IP-based? And they had a program called Web 21C, which is what are the web applications we can build to make some extra revenue for British Telecom. And that's when I got more and more into this world of social networking and more into the world of collaboration, and comes very, very close to the heart now. What I'm going to talk to you about today is probably very simple, the evolution of the internet and social networks, and put forth an idea on where I think this is moving forward to in the future. So let's look back, and let's look back to, say, 1960s, where truly the birth of the internet really started when circuit-based networks started moving to packet switching. And Balaji taught me this in 2005, and it's been a long way since 1960s when they slowly moved into the 1970s, where they started developing protocols around TCP/IP, the whole domain name system, the DNS records, which started developing over 70s and 80s. Towards the early 90s is when MIT, under Tim Berners-Lee, really developed the World Wide Web and created a consortium called the W3C, or the World Wide Web Consortium, which was basically a coordinating agency between everybody who wanted to use that World Wide Web. And that is why Tim Berners-Lee is known as the father of the web, or the father of the internet, as we know it today. From the 90s, you quickly got into HTTP, HTML, and what they started doing is they created the first GUI browser, which was, I guess, Netscape, or at least was one of the first few ones. And I think most of us here have a handle on what happened after that. We've all used, say, Netscape, or we've used Internet Explorer version 6, and we've been savvy on the internet since then. Right? So what happened around the early 2000s, or say 2003, is when they started saying this is now Web 2.0. Right? And that became a fashionable term, and that became something of interest to most people. So what was Web 2.0? Web 2.0, in my mind, in one line, the big difference was the increase in the number of interactions and the increase in the number of transactions. It was Web 1.0, if I can call it that, was more of a storehouse of information. But when we moved to Web 2.0, it became a lot more interaction. Right? So what do I mean by that? One philosophy was that consumers of content became producers of content. And two big examples of that are Wikipedia and YouTube, right? 100% user-generated content. You had started having, with open source technology, you got open APIs and open standards in websites. So all of a sudden, Pizza Hut could take a Google map and say, these are all the Pizza Huts in your city. You can find the closest Pizza Hut to you. And that happened because it was open APIs and open standards, and websites could talk to each other once again. Online media streaming became all the more easier with bandwidth improving. You did a lot more online payments, online transactions, and peer-to-peer networks came up. So, in fact, if you look at the reports from the industry today, most of the internet bandwidth is taken up by P2P networks, right? You think it'll be Facebook, you think it'll be Google search, but no, it's actually people downloading movies, sharing music. That is what is taking up most of the internet bandwidth. And if, in a sense, that is the biggest social network, the peer-to-peer network. But anyway, let's move on to the more traditional definition of social networks and what they mean to us today. And I'm going to speak a lot about two big players, Google and Facebook. And so let's start with Google. How many of you ever signed up on Orkut? Say that's about, say, 50, 60%, right? How many of you still use Orkut? Not a single hand, right? And this is one beautiful example of, I can't think of any product in any industry where within 12 months, you got 20 million users in India, and in the next 12 months, you have 0 users in India, right? That is one fascinating aspect of social networks and about the internet, which I think is important to notice over here. Right, now let's move on to say Facebook. How many of you are signed on to Facebook? Right, just about everybody. And what do I find fascinating about Facebook? There's 1,000 billion page views every month. 1,000 billion page views. You know, these are those astronomical figures that don't even come into play when you're talking about normal technology. Half of Facebook users log in every day, right? So managers, you know when you're accusing someone that they are accessing Facebook, it is true. You know, people are logging into Facebook every day, at least half of all users. Another interesting thing about Facebook, I've heard this. Apparently, men spend most of their time on Facebook looking at pictures of women who they don't know. Right? Okay, not a big surprise, right? We can understand. Men will be men, boys will be boys. What do girls do? Apparently, girls are spending their time looking at pictures of other girls who they know. What did they wear at that party? How are they celebrating their birthday, etc. So, you know, most of the pictures that are seeing are of the girls on Facebook. That's a very interesting anecdote that I heard. Another interesting thing about Facebook, you guys have played Farmville by a company called Zynga. Zynga is doing really well. They're going public, going to make billions of dollars and changing the face of the gaming industry. Anyway, there are more Farmville players, not Zynga, Farmville players, than there are Twitter users. Right? That's how big Zynga has become. That's how big Farmville has become. Right? It has changed so much around us. Right? So now we looked a bit about Orkut. We look at Facebook. Let's look at what are the economics behind all of this. Right? So how does Google make money? Yeah. Very often people don't know this, but Google makes money from the sponsored links that you see on the right side. Right? So the browser is free, Chrome, the Gmail is free, search is free, so they don't charge any of the users. They are only charging the advertisers, right? It could be 2 rupees a click, it could be 100 rupees a click, but they make $30 billion a year just from those clicks. The advertisers pay per click. It's a pay per click model or a cost per click model. And you can think how many clicks are adding up at 2 rupees per click to get $30 billion. So it's a fantastic model there that Google is doing. Right? Facebook said, this is great. I've got the users. Let me use the same model, and let me put advertisers on my platform. And so Facebook started doing the same thing. Now, slowly what happened is that Google saw a huge threat, right? And about a year ago, what happened was Eric Schmidt, the CEO of Google, he resigned. One of the co-founders of Google, Larry Page, he became the CEO of Google. And the very first day, he announced that everybody's incentive pay is linked to social. Every single person in Google's pay is linked to the company's performance on social. And this became very important for the company. And why is it that they saw such a big threat to Facebook? It's very interesting. Have any of you signed up on Google+? Some of you, right? You know, Google+ didn't come like Google Buzz or didn't come like Open Social. Those things just landed up in your Gmail and you could use them. But this time they asked you to sign up. And when they asked you to sign up, they asked 3 questions. They asked you, are you Mrs., Mr., or Miss? They asked you your date of birth, and they asked you which city you're from. Trivial information, nobody has a problem. I'll tell them that, right? Why? When you're an advertiser, you want to reach your target audience. So if I'm Maruti, I'm selling my Alto car, then I'm looking for, say, 25 to 35-year-old males in cities based out of these cities in India, right? Facebook had that information. Google did not. Because when you do a Google search, they don't know who's searching. But on Facebook, you do a search, they know who's searching. So advertisers had rushed to Facebook to get targeted advertising, and now Google saw that threat and hence had to launch Google+. So that was an interesting dynamic in the evolution of social networks. I've got just a couple of minutes left. I just want to talk about what I see as the future of social networks. Social networks will now become vertical-based or context-based. And the easiest way to understand this is, when you're on Facebook, every time a friend of yours posts, say, a dirty joke on your wall, or a picture from a party, you think, oh no, yeah, my colleagues at work will see this picture, or my family will see this picture. And it's really odd that you have your colleagues, your family, and your friends on the same platform, right? People want to segregate different aspects of their lives because that's how they live their life in real life, right? And so, for example, in my company, we run India's largest network of lawyers, something called mylaw.net, right? It's a place where they talk about anything to do with their legal opinions, their thoughts about the legal cases. They can do courses, they can do anything that they want online, but it has nothing to do with their social life, and hence it's become a vertical-based, context-based social network. Another good example, which is closer to home for you guys, is the UI platform within Tech Mahindra, right? So it's something which is just for employees, and it's just for that context of Tech Mahindra, right? It's something where you can talk about i5 and everybody will understand what you're talking about. You can talk about work-related issues, technology-related issues. You can even talk about personal issues which you want to share at work without having to think that, it's a waste of my family's time or a waste of my friend's time going through that information. And so that's another sort of context base which I think is in store for the future of social networking. So that's pretty much it from my side. I think I've got a couple of minutes to spare, but thank you very much for your time. It was a pleasure being here today, and look forward to interacting in the future. Thank you.